closed.
Yeah, Lisa, I felt yesterday a lot of resistance after the satsang, what you were talking about these life patterns. These patterns is a relationship. And in my head they were all coming this therapeutic stuff. Of course you can change this pattern. And in my mind was the whole time arguing with you. And I felt these, how do you call it, energetic pull. And the whole time. And then we went to the Arunachala, and then it dropped, went away, and then it came back. And in the night at 5 it started again. It's not true. Of course you can change the pattern. I can do something, she can do something, like that. And then suddenly I realized it's just that I really think that I have a life, and you tell me you don't have a life. And I don't want to hear that. But please tell me again.
Because if change is going to happen, it requires thought or the energy to come up for that change to happen. And maybe there's a belief that you're creating that energy or that thought to come up to change that.
Yeah.
Where does that thought and that energy come from? Is there a you in there creating that thought? Or does it just suddenly appear and then action happens? Or not action happens?
Yeah, but there's such a strong belief that she can do something for me.
Yeah. And then, to say if you go to someone that you can see suffering and they never change anything, then the thought goes to they could do something if they wanted to, but they don't. But it requires that energy and that thought. And the question is, where does that energy and thought to change come from? Where is that coming from? And when it's seen that there's absolutely no little person in here or in here doing that it's coming from absolute empty space, then it's seen that nobody ever did anything. That who you thought you were was thoughts and sensations and energies appearing, giving the impression that there's somebody there doing. But it's terrible for the one that thinks. Terrible, the one that thinks is doing. But then also, in another way, it's absolute relief and the end of blame. Because then you can never blame, again, someone for not doing something. Because when it's seen that there's absolutely no one there creating these energies and thoughts, the programming, then there's no longer blame. And blame and guilt are the majority of suffering. That's the majority of the time what that contraction is. They could have done something different, I should have done something different, or expectation of how, or a situation, or you should have responded to a situation, should be. And when it's seen that all of it's coming from absolute empty space, from no one, then you see that there's no one that ever did anything wrong. The root, the source of all thoughts, all feelings come from absolute emptiness. And it's not that doing stops. So it's not then that, because I know you guys are masseuse, and I don't know that much about what you do. I have a little understanding. It's not that that's wrong, because you never did that either. So I think
we make a lot of therapeutic stuff too, and this was always my question. Why is there someone, sometimes they come maybe for 10 sessions and maybe someone comes one session and they change. They change and some of them come 20, 30 sessions
and they don't change.
And they don't change. And I always thought, why?
I
I don't know where's this hint that change happens?
And it's because either, and this sounds so dry, but whether life decides that or not, but it's not that your massage or healing practice is useless in a way, because in the past you maybe thought that it was doing something, but it's an absolute divine expression of oneness, now expressing itself in healing, in massage, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And then somebody come, and some people, maybe 60-70% of people go away, and that suffering part of their body has fallen away, but it was never because of the massage, it's because life is expressing itself in that way. So it's the end of, so it's not stop doing those massages or anything like that, it's the end of the belief that you're doing it, it's life doing it, and that's a beautiful expression. I love massage, like I love acupuncture, and I don't so often go for it now. If I had more money, maybe there would be more going, but it's not to do with me, it's life. Because often people hear this message and they think I'm saying don't do what everything you do is useless. It's that all that emphasis that was put, it's not that everything's useless, it's that the activity of the mind that's putting importance on everything falls away. That dynamic falls away. Because it is what it is, we don't know what's happening. We have such limited information, and the mind makes all these stories to try and make sense of it. And really what it's doing is trying to make safety and position and an idea of where and how it fits into the world when we don't know. We're just instruments of life playing out the role, and then the mind wants to make sense, to live in future and past, in the idea to really to create safety, and the idea that it can get something in the future, it can get more in the future. And then it just comes when all those ideas of importance of they're doing this or that, or they should be doing this, all these ideas fall away, you're just left experiencing. And that doesn't mean not doing. Doing still happens, but it's no longer believe that you're some little person in here creating those thoughts and those energies and impulses. They're seen as coming from life, and that little self falls into the ocean of what we are, like falls into back into God, or so many people say it in different ways and it's so hard to put it. And it's that little self, and the biggest drama that the little self, although I did like the word little self because it makes it sound like it's bad in some way, it's just as beautiful expression of God, no longer can claim anything and say I did this, she did that. And it's the end of blame, it's absolute love, because there's no longer they got this wrong, I got this wrong. That can only come with doership. It's absolute acceptance, and it's absolute acceptance because the resistance fell away. And as long as there's a doer there, there'll always be resistance, because you'll think you can do it better. But it's not that. Some people then say, so I'm absolutely meaningless, or this is absolutely meaningless because the mind can't fixate on a bigger picture in the future. It's not that. It's not that you're meaningless, it's that you just become experiencing without all these grand and big ideas, or these suffering ideas of I've done it wrong, I've got to get it better in the future, I messed this up. It's the end of that little self-importance, and you just become a beautiful expression of life just as you are, without that second jumping in and going, no, you could have done this better, no, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Without wanting something.
Yeah. I tend to use like craving, like more, or seeking, because then there's still preference arising. Like there'll still be a preference. Like if there's massage is enjoyed, then there'll be a preference doing this. Like I enjoy talking about this, so there's a preference or a like of talking about it, and a preference to a quiche as opposed to just raw vegetables. Well, I like raw vegetables too, but I'm trying to say there's still likes, like I like a cup of tea in the morning, but it's no longer that. I've got to have it for my happiness in the future, this idea of what the next moment's going to bring. And that comes with a doer. That idea of happiness in the future can only come with somebody who can get it. So it's the end of all self-identification. But it's seeing where that self comes from, where inside of you that comes from, that there's nothing there. There's nobody there. Like Ramana's, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Constantly questioning it. But then there's absolutely nothing wrong with going to Pune, but there's just no longer the belief in any of it. That it's going to give you something in the future. It is what it is. And then there might be change. It's more than likely if you go to a physical therapist, it's more than likely that improvement will happen rather than, going to somebody who's going to do karate with you every day or martial arts. Like, it's still the world's working in logic. If you've got a pain, and going to it's not that you stop going to the doctor, it's just that whole movement towards, I'm doing this, I'm getting this right, I can get this in the future that goes.
And when I am not doing it, getting it right, the person who comes to me is the same,
Yeah.
then what to do? And when I know that she can't get it right too.
But there's nothing wrong then, but it's then, if there's like a discussing of, say, emotions, I'm not sure exactly what you do, but say if there's like
a lot of emotional
yeah,
processes.
yeah. But it's like there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just, before you used to do it for an outcome, now you're doing it because that's the impulse that God's put in you. So it's then, you're not saying to them, so say if they come to you and they're talking about their emotions, before there was maybe the idea in play that this will lead to something in the future. But you still might talk about it, that there's still more than likely talking about it and discussing of the emotions coming up. But there's no longer that belief in it. But it's not that it won't still happen. Because it's really hard to
Yeah, for me it was.
because I still talk about this, even
Yeah.
though, like,
For me, in the morning, it came just to this point. In what you were saying once, you don't have a life. Life is. And when you don't have these beliefs that I have a life, then just life is, and then it's everything is good.
but it doesn't mean that anything changes in this, like physically changes. It's just the dropping of that idea. So the massage and the talking about emotions, like they're talking about this. I would say that I can't liberate you, but yet there is a talking about liberation, and it's just seen as God's will if that changes. So there's still the talking or the carrying of the job, but it's just coming from no longer from the place that you're doing anything. It's now just seen as that's the impulse and the words coming up, which are absolute perfection. Because then the mind says, okay, so I don't talk about this, or like this is useless, because the mind's always trying to find use. But the talking about it and the work carries on. But there's no longer that belief there. I'm doing this, I'm getting it wrong. It's seen as coming from emptiness. So here, there's still talking, one-on-one sessions in groups on the internet. But there's no longer, because the mind thinks I only do things because of outcome. There's no longer that belief there that this is going to be any outcome. It's just not thought about. There's no energy going there anymore. There's just talking about it because there's the urge to talk about it. And then if there's an outcome, then that's the outcome. anyone want a cushion? Yeah. Has everyone got cushions? Yeah.
Maybe it's today my day.
Yeah.
When I felt this nothingness, how do you know that there are just one nothingness and not many nothingness? Because I perceive just as nothingness, and from there your voice comes, their voice comes. You know? How do you know that there's one
Yeah.
from?
That's a very good question. And it's not so much a knowing. It's not so much a new idea or an intellectual knowing. It's the end of the belief in two. So two-ness, or self and other, requires an idea. If we take out all ideas now, there's just this experience happening. There's a watching of this experience. It requires an idea to pop in, to say there's Lisa over there or there's me here. In this experience now, there's just watching, and I'm more you, just talking from that perspective there, than your body is at the moment, because what's happening is there's a seeing of all this. It requires a thought to come up to say this is Lisa and this is you. So it's not that a new knowing or a new idea pops up, this is all oneness. It's the end of all those other ideas that said this is two. Do you understand what I mean? So it requires ideas, because otherwise there's just watching, which is absolute whole. It requires an idea to say, an idea and an energy, that I am this body, mind, mechanism. When that falls away, all of this becomes you. So all of this becomes, and it's not, it was always you, but there was just that idea in there that I'm this separate self doing life. And when that falls away, there's just watching for nobody. Even requires another idea to say there's a somebody there with nothingness in them. So when the ideas of self fall away, you just become experience, which is oneness. But it's not an idea, even though I'm communicating it to you in an idea. And you can get that experience, that you can maybe see that now when I'm talking. When there's not the idea of you as a separate self there, there's just experience happening. Just awareness with experience happening in it. And there's no localized you. There's all of this. But it takes an idea and that energy of to create
even to ask this question.
Yeah. But when there's, and so here now, I often call myself an idiot, but it's a bit of a harsh word. But like, there's no ideas left of selfness. There's no ideas of self and other and the world. But it's not that I'm thinking I'm all of this. It's the removal of those other ideas, and when they're removed, there's always this, which is oneness. Always experiencing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Always this watching, and everything's inside of this watching. Everything, all of this. Although that now is not inside, because I can only see this, that's just imagination. Whatever's being seen is what is, which is absolutely whole. And then the idea pops in of future, of past, of other, of a street over there, which is ideas. And then when that's all stripped away, there's just this left, which is absolutely whole and complete. And so you see why that doership leaves, and then it's not even that you're living in non-doership. You're living without anything. So you're not even, when doership goes, you're not even leaving in non-doership. That sounds like what you'd live in, non-doership. Like I'm not, and I might even say that I'm not the doer, you're not the doer. But you don't then live in non-doership. You live without anything. Just as this, without the idea that I'm here, this, all of this comes you. Because you are that experiencing. You're never those ideas and those energetical contractions. They're arising in you. In exactly the same way this pole's arising in you. And Laurent's arising in me, and this camera.
Hi, Laurent.
Can I say something towards your question? It reminded me of a teacher that I like called Francis Lucille. I don't know if you know him. Francis Lucille.
No.
He was the teacher of Rupert Spira. Maybe you know him. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He says that to the mind that wants to understand, that wants proof, he says we don't have proof that there is oneness, but we don't have proof that there is two-ness.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah.
And this kind of
Yeah, I understood it like that too. Because when you're in this oneness, you don't even question.
Yeah.
no, and oneness is a word.
It's a word, yeah.
But it's true that we don't have proof that this awareness stops somewhere, and but we don't have proof that it stops. Is that true?
Very nice. The mind's constantly making stories. So constantly going into stories, which isn't wrong, it just loves making stories. And when it's making those stories, it's giving an appearance of time and space and a somebody doing something in time and space. When that falls away, which it's always doing for everybody, it's always falling away, and you're just becoming the drinking, or you're just becoming hearing, drinking, talking, you're just becoming a doing word. When you're just doing, and the stories aren't taking center, where is the past, where is the future? When those ideas aren't there, you're just left with experiencing. It requires those ideas of past, of future, of something you've got to get to give the impression of a somebody, which is fantastic. I mean, this is the most amazing creation, like the most amazing creation of self, of a separate self, that these ideas pop up, but when they're not there, who are you? You're just experiencing. And then the thought comes up, no, I'm this past, I'm what I've got to get in the future, I'm this doer. But they're only ever thoughts. Action happens, going to the chai shop happens, and the mind comes in and says, I'm doing that, and gives an impression of somebody separate from all of this. When those thoughts and energies fall away, there's just experiencing for nobody. But it's an amazing creation, and the other day somebody pointed out to me, it's because it tends, when we're talking spiritually, or we're talking in satsang, that the seeking energy is absolutely terrible and it's the worst thing, the separate self. And it sounds like that, but it also can be great drama. Like, we watch films about it, like somebody seeking their lover, or the big love story, like something like Titanic, where they're so in love and the portrait. There's fascination with the drama as well. Like, it's beautiful in one sense. It's just, it appears to be that life writes into a few of us are no longer the interest in this, and finding it in the world. a getting tired of finding it in the world. And then there's a coming back to who you truly are. This is just thoughts and ideas. When you take that away, we just, yeah. And so if the thoughts come up to investigate emotions, or when sensations are coming from, that's not wrong, because that's too what God is doing. Then the investigations of thoughts or emotions, or where this come from, it's never you that's choosing to do that. It might come with the thought, I'm choosing to investigate these emotions, or I'm choosing to sit here and meditate or to reflect on who I am. But there's never somebody doing it, any of it. So I'm really not saying don't do, I'm saying it was never you doing it. And the funniest thing is about all this is it really doesn't make sense. Not just what I'm talking about, but life. It really doesn't. It's really odd. Like, it is just bizarre. But the mind is constantly making it make sense and be normal, or an idea of normality. And I was expressing this to Laurent, and even the idea of yesterday is such a bizarre idea because it's only appearing now, but I'm just going to tell you a bit of a story. Yesterday I was visiting a friend of mine who's ill. She also teaches satsang. Her name's Karen. And I was sat in her apartment and we were all having a very mundane conversation about a very, I think we were even gossiping or whatever, but we were all just sitting there enjoying gossiping. And what began to happen here was consciousness kept disappearing. But there's no longer an even care about any of that making sense. That there's no longer what the hell's happening. It was just like, so it was like the consciousness kept falling out of my body, and then it would come back, and then there was gossiping again, and it was like and then it was falling out, coming back, and that was such odd consciousness. It was almost like I was passing out, but the body was staying upright, and I have no idea why or what that's about. It really is irrelevant. like the mind used to try and make sense of some spiritual experiences. It really doesn't any of it make sense. But yeah, and then she comes back and we're gossiping again. We're having a good old gossiping, and I think Laurent was, because Karen wasn't well, he was making her a drink of rice juice or something. He was cooking rice and getting her to drink the juice.
The water of the rice, yeah.
It's just, life is just bizarre. Like, it's just such a funny experience. And then we're back and she's drinking the juice as if everything's so making sense, and now we're back to having a good old gossip.
So I've only a thought.
Sorry?
This is my feeling. I've only a thought.
I am only a thought, yeah. And with that thought, though, there's also an energy that comes with it. So thoughts, as I'm sure you know from all your practices, thoughts come with energy. So that it's like a thought of you being you, and an energetic contraction happening in the torso. Like with that comes this kind of contraction into the body. You know what I mean?
So thoughts you're believing more strongly cause more strong contractions.
Yeah. But it's not you believing them more strongly, it's life writing that in too.
It's what again?
Life writing that in too. So if you're like life writing those thoughts in too. So if you're thinking, so if the thoughts are coming up, I'm victim, this person's going to hurt me, then there'll be that energetic appearance of fear of this person out there happening that's going to hurt you. And when that's fallen away, there's just experiencing happening. There might be fear arising because they're coming towards you with a knife, but that's just what's happening. It's no longer happening to me. There's just fear arising in exactly the same manner as the other person arising. Before it was like, they're going to hurt me. And I was being kicked. It was almost like being kicked in here, and life was hitting you. And when that self-identification falls away, it was just experiencing happening. And emotions still happen. Sadness might happen when you see a dog dying on the side of the street, but it's no longer happening to them and me. It's happening in this.
This being?
In experiencing, in awareness, consciousness, nothingness, whatever or everything. So many different. So it requires that dynamic, but you're not creating that thought, I'm a victim and they're a perpetrator. Life's writing that in and giving an impression.
Writing it, so it's just like life causes that for some unknown reason.
Yeah. Because, you could say because it wants to experience that, but that again is another thought. When there's no thought of that there, then there's just experiencing happening. Before here, there was such a huge idea of myself, like Lisa or my story was the victim. So there was always an attraction, but it wasn't me being attracted to that. Life was doing that, of perpetrator, of something hurting, something doing. Even with a cow, I used to fear the cows would always headbutt me. They would be walking along and then there'd be that cow's going to headbutt me. I'm going to get a horn up my butt. So it was always, that dynamic was always happening. But it was never me creating it. And it gives the impression of somebody here and something out there going to hurt you.
So it just happened to you that belief, you didn't change that belief, but it happened to you that that belief got changed.
Yeah. I could never ever have worked out how to do this. So in this story, and it doesn't have to be the same for everyone, everyone's story is unique to that story, the way life wants to paint it. In this one, it was a spiritual seeking, there was Buddhism, different teachers along the way, but it was never because of that. It appears because of that teacher's dispelling those ideas, or there's a listening to different concepts. It appears because of that, but it's never because of that, because that's another idea, it's because of that. It's just life happening.
Are you saying that whatever happens, we think we do it, but anything that happens, it would happen anyway.
Yeah.
Also, if we use our mind, if we don't use our mind, that what happens, it would happen anyway.
Yeah.
It's just the betraying to ourselves that we think that we have done the decision now to lead this kind of life.
Yeah.
It happens anyway.
Yeah.
But why am I feeling always such a struggle to decide things? If I don't decide for living this kind of life, I think I decide what kind of life, but yes, it would be so wonderful if it would be like you say. It would be absolutely wonderful to let that work through me.
Rather than because of you.
Yes.
And through this, rather than because of somebody doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But the appearance of choice can still happen, as in, like here, I go into the shop and there's an appearance of which soap to buy. There's these thoughts coming up, but there's no longer the sense these thoughts are me, or that these thoughts are doing anything. Thought appears up, should I get this soap? Another thought pops up, this soap. But it's never because there's somebody in here deciding.
Yeah.
It's just these thoughts popping up, and then another energy or thought deciding which one to get. They were never me, those thoughts. So thinking still can happen or not happen sometimes. Just walking into the shop, no thoughts appearing, and just buying it, getting the money out and no thoughts appearing. Life will express itself in any way it wants to. And the thing is in all the decisions, and though you feel like you're making those decisions, or you feel anxiety around these decisions that have got to be made, you never ever make them. It's always going to be the decision that's made.
Would it always be the same? It would have, the decisions would be the same.
Yeah.
If I use my mind, if I don't use my mind, that what should
Yeah.
happen, it does happen anyway.
Yeah.
Is it like that?
Yeah, but also the idea that you use your mind or not use your mind, that too will happen or not happen.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So all of it's going to happen or not happen. What happened here now is not that the thoughts stop or emotions stop. It's the energy that believes it's me and that I'm doing these thoughts or doing anything. So there's no longer that suffering of, because often what's happening in that dynamic is there's, when making a decision, there's also the idea of the ultimate pleasure from the end of that decision. So indecision that's happening, like you're deciding whether to go to Oroville or Thailand, the mind is fearing not making the right choice, not having the ultimate pleasure, and then getting pain from that choice. And now, exactly the same, it's always going to be the choice that's made, always going to be the experience that happens. And here, even the thoughts of choice come up, but it's no longer my choices that happen. So therefore, if I get pain from going to Thailand rather than Oroville, I'm no longer in blame about anything. It's just then the experience. And Thailand's not as good I don't even think it's not as good as Oroville. There's just the experience happening. Whereas before, the suffering was coming from, I made the wrong choice. I got this wrong.
As if there was a doer that
Yeah,
could decide a
decide.
better choice.
Yeah. There's never
Alright.
anybody there. So what falls away in liberation is the energetic, I say energetic belief, although it's just a pointing that the energy that goes into believing that you're making decisions or choices about anything. So therefore blame doesn't arise anymore. The expectation of how a situation should be, the guilt.
For having made a wrong
The
choice.
choice, yeah, the
Gone the
doership
wrong
dynamic
direction.
falls away. However, then you don't live in non-doership. If you lived in non-doership, that again would be suffering, because then experience be happening, and then another doer would come in and say, I'm not doing, they're not doing. It's just the dynamics of blame and guilt fall away. Because if you look at your experience, you'll see that all suffering comes from seeking, from somebody doing something. It's coming from a blame dynamic, a guilt dynamic. They got it wrong, I got it wrong. or expectation, an expectation that you had and not fulfilled, or pride or shame, like I've embarrassed myself, or yes, I got liberation. It's always doership that's suffering, that's taking you out of the, well, it's not even taking you out of the experience, but is creating a past, a future, and ideas of somebody getting this right or wrong. So it's that dynamic that falls away in liberation. But then you don't become not a doer, you then just become experiencing without somebody claiming, without a self, a separate self, claiming everything that's happening. So this is the minus program, this is the falling away of that one that thinks it's in control. And it's such a joke, believing that one, because life is happening all the time. Walking up the street, talking to someone, you're not thinking before you talk. Sometimes the mind pops in and thinks, I've got to get this talking right. But most of the time, life is just happening without that one getting you. And then the one jumps in, normally after, and goes, you really messed up that conversation. You shouldn't have said that. But in the conversation, words were just coming out. Maybe they were, like this morning, a funny thing happened between me and Laurent, although I'm not sure if he found it so funny. He told me I couldn't use his gel this morning, and I'd run out of gel.
What is it?
Gel.
Ah.
And mine ran out. So when he went into the bathroom, I ran over to his gel and used the gel. And then I heard, are you using the gel? And in the past, there would have been the thought, I'm a bad person doing that. But no, it's just, I didn't even think about it. He just went and there was putting the gel in the hair. There wasn't even the thought. It was just experience. It was just, like, I didn't even, and then afterwards, the mind in the past would have come in and go, what a bad person you are. And then Laurent said something about trust, and then it's like, yes, you're not trustworthy. You're such a flimsy person. It was just the action happening. As soon as the door shut, over to the gel.
You could rephrase it and say, once the idea of self-identity is really gone, and obviously there's no one left to do anything. I mean, choice is happening obviously because there's no one left to choose.
Yeah.
It's very obvious. It's just very logical. Extremely logical. And also, I mean, everything like free will and choice. And actually, it's quite funny because for Eva, I tried to explain that night on this huge table. Yeah, it went somewhere else. But it's really once you realize that and I have moments I'm there, and then I come back and I identify with this idea again. I'm a separate one, and then I mean the whole world gets recreated and duality gets recreated. But it's really once you realize that when this idea of self-identity is really gone, then I mean, who is left to do something?
But choice happens. But nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
Free
I
will
mean,
appears,
there's like no one who could actually choose something, but the choice will happen. But if there's no separate self, I mean, who could, like, who could choose something? I mean, there's no one left to choose. There's just words are very limited. Yeah.
And have you worked out how to put this into German yet?
I could. But then, even in Swiss German.
I have a question. Wait. No, go ahead.
Wenn Person als separat. Er is einfach niemand meer da.
Ah, yes.
Oh, that's it, yeah.
The international setting. I have a question in French. Alors Lisa, qu'est-ce que tu penses de...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's great. I don't know.
Right.
I actually do have a question. Would you say that it seems that the major dynamic of suffering that you're pointing at, is that second. Action happens, and then very quickly the mind claims it.
Yeah.
That claiming is obviously conceptual and energetical.
Yeah.
And you would call that the dynamic of
Yeah.
the separate self.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so often I use the word second.
Yeah, it's great. I
Yeah.
like second as
One
a thought that comes after.
Yeah.
Second what?
So I call the
Second
separate
thought.
self the second. The one that's coming in after action and saying, this is me. Sometimes it's coming in so quickly, there's not even a noticing of it coming in. The second. The one that's claiming the experience, the second that's, this is me, this is mine. And so another thing I want to just make clear, and this is what used to happen here, was I thought that this was a new intellectual way of the self living. That I would intellectually get this, get it really right, and then intellectually live this. What this is the end of any intellectual living. It's absolute freefall. It's life happening. It's doing the naughty, pinching Laurent's gel when he's not looking. But there's no one there claiming it as a me anymore. So it's absolute freefall. It's not doing the right or wrong actions or being a great person or a bad person. It's living without someone intellectually claiming this. And the intellectually creates an energetic, or it's not even it creates, they come together. This person is bad. This person's going to hurt me.
Yeah. So my question had to do with you often quote like the 5 or 6 aspects of doership mechanism.
Yeah.
The way Ramesh
Yeah.
teaches it. So blame, guilt, shame, pride, and expectation.
Yeah, and the expectation is opposites because is worry and anxiety.
Yes. And I was wondering if, because out of all these talks and all that I'm perceiving inside, it's the idea of importance. Of what's important. I guess meaningful and importance. Do that fall away completely?
It's not that you become meaningless.
No.
Yeah.
I'm saying that
Meaning.
nothing, because the second arrives with that energetical glue on top of action, the first thing that it claims that it's fucking important.
Yeah.
That goes away, or do you
Yeah.
still have popping up of importance, like this is important, this matters? Because it seems that most liberated people, although there's not really liberate people, live with some well, the word of Francis Lucille comes again, as a benevolent indifference. But it goes to our story of the gel thing. I couldn't care less about the gel, but it seems that there's a crumbling away of the values in relationship, of the value of trusting, for example. But trust, yeah.
It's really a minus program, isn't it?
It is. So all the values of the morality in which I've been totally bathed, like all my life, even if it's hidden or not hidden, now it's all coming up to be checked, because I know it's suffering, and I can intellectually understand, actually energetically understand that, well, if it doesn't matter, actually, if I don't set standards to the way a person should be or the way I should be, it's all going to be cool. Of course, the idea of chaos comes around,
chaos.
or like apocalypse, you know.
And their mind loves to imagine that if it wasn't in control, all hell would be let loose from like you are a bad person and you're controlling that badness.
And it's not true. I also see a shift in the. Up till now, I would go to the bitterness side of it, to the bitter end of it, meaning doesn't matter. Okay, then fuck all then, you know, and it's okay, you know. But that's still identity there. This is still like a new meaning.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is nothing has really any. When we look very close at anything, it is meaning. It's meaningless. It has no meaning.
Yeah.
A sensation has no meaning. The sound has no meaning.
Yeah. But you're not living in a new idea of meaningless
Or non-importance.
non-important. It's just that experiencing is experiencing, whether you are a millionaire or a beggar, or you get the love, or you're trustworthy or not trustworthy. But somebody asked me recently, and it surprised me the answer that came out. Someone said, "How do I know to trust you?" And I said, "Because I am you." It's not what I meant. What was meant by that is that what was meant by that was there's nobody here to trust or not trust. That's an idea. The expectations of standards, it's not that then I'm going to be around, it's more than likely here, if somebody's living with me and constantly stealing, there might be a moving away from that, because suddenly there's no money left to have your food. But it's not because I'm doing that, it's just that that's the way the story works. It normally works very logically. And so the mind thinks, if there's nobody there being trustworthy, and she's going to, just from that perspective there, she's going to lie all the time. But that's the mind's imagination. You see, what's the experience more often than not? I'm painfully honest, except when it comes to Joe. Actually, to be honest with you, I do things like that. Like, I broke my friend's table and then I hid it. And then they said, "Did you break this?" And I was going to break in it. And then they started questioning more and more, and then I just fell over laughing because I just couldn't hold it up anymore. And I was like, "I broke it!" And then I hit it. And then they fell over laughing too, and then were slightly angry.
But if nothing is important anymore, this is not important. But this is not important can be another thing the mind holds on to, another identification where nothing is important.
And then what might happen from that experience is the person is very angry. You shouldn't have, angry at you. And then if you steal the food, then society has consequences. If you steal, more than likely prison will happen. If you hide someone's table after you break it, it might be anger that comes the way.
Yeah.
Well, you could also say, like, everything has the same importance. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the same. It sounds a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really drinking a cup of tea is just as important as having satsang or going to bed for sleep or going home to brush my teeth or. It's just
as important.
Yeah, exactly. It's just as important.
Intellectually, I'm with you. When that comes up,
No,
it's stronger than the intellect. That.
Right.
I remember the Dalai Lama, like one of the first books I read, or the second books that I read of Buddhism. I remember him saying he loves the beggar, the king, his brother, like flesh and blood. He named a list of different types of people, and he said, "I love them the same," or "Love is the same." I can't remember exactly, and it's the truth. Whatever experience is happening, there is preferences, but that's different from having an idea of somebody or having a story with something and believing that that one is better. That's different from preferences. But everything and everyone, every experience is loved as much as the other. Because if you're not the person, then you're the experiencing, and all of it is welcome. It's the person, that has ideas about how it wants to be, the expectations and beliefs.
But there can be a preference for some story over other stories, although you don't believe it's better or
Yeah. Like a preference for hanging out with you than being, than hanging out with someone that's talking non-stop about how bad their partner is or blah, blah.
even preferences is not totally correct. It's just the way the flow of energy goes. Because when you go for preference, the mind comes with rules automatically. Or the end of rules, that's still a concept, you know what I mean?
It's in the moment, the energy writes in
Yes.
something that's more
Exactly.
attracted to the chocolate cake or
Yeah.
eating vegetables.
So when it doesn't, when we stay with now, it just doesn't make sense, and we live in the absence of meaning. That's another, I don't know. But preferences talks to the past, talks to the mind about past, and then very quickly shoulds and shouldn't and this.
But but then also if you don't bring up preferences, then people, like that conversation the other day about happily eating poop, is that they
And preference can change any minute.
yeah.
This is why it's not preference. It's just if there's nobody here, there's
Just an energy coming up.
you don't know why you're doing this thing. In any moment, you don't really know why you're doing this. You can justify it because, oh, I like to zoom in because I prefer the way you look, but that's bullshit. This is still the mind making a story out of what happened, and the me is there at the center of the story.
But also the meme will jump back in. Another dynamic of what it did, and Nisu, or I did that many a time, of jumping back in and saying, okay, so everything's welcome. So then eating poop is. I remember someone saying to me the other day, have you tried eating poison yet? It's like, then the mind jumps in and claims that anything.
Yes. It's the bitter end. It's what I call the bitter end.
Yeah.
Like, let's kill everybody.
Yeah.
But that's too. This is just do a shit.
It's trying to point out also, because then the mind takes on indifference.
Yes.
I'm going to be indifferent to everything.
Yes.
So there's still energies in a situation that come up and say chocolate cake or cup of tea as opposed to poop.
Yeah.
However, we never know. Maybe one day you'll come in and see me.
Eating poop.
Yes.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But it's not you doing it.
No.
It's not you preferring it.
No.
Just life writing it right now.
Yeah.
Life writing is doing this now.
Lisa, Nisargadatta makes a lot of references to most people's lives moving between fear and desire. It's the fear of not being able to get something, or the fear of when they've got it, fear of losing it. It's the continual flipping back and forth. Do you have choice now about the following or not following of desire or fear? Are you able to be a witness to that and seeing the desire come up? Okay, all right, I see that. There's no need to tangle with that.
No, there is no choice to do that because there's nobody here to do it. However, the appearance of choice might appear to follow a desire or not follow a fear, and that might happen that neither of those are followed, but not because somebody picked it, because life wrote in that appearance of choice and one thing being picked over the other. So when there's doership there, which is always falling away in everyone, when there is doership there, there's the thought that you're choosing, but there's no one there choosing, but there might be the appearance of that. So
it looks like another possibility has arisen where desire and fear are seen as they come up. And it seems like
you can choose.
Like there's a choosing of following it or not
following it. But it's written in either way. Like in this story, there was certainly, in the story of Lisa, there was certainly all that appearance, appearing like I was choosing, the appearance that I saw the seeking patterns, but it was then seen, it was never me seeing it. That was always what, and then life wrote in a seeing, that it was never me seeing it. So life wrote in, and what happened here towards the end, although this isn't how it has to be, like the mind then will listen to this and say, this is how it can be anyway, was do you put this? There was a giving up of any of those choices, and I sat very still, or there was a very little movement for a period of time, and it felt like there was a giving up. And it was also seen at that time also that Lisa wasn't giving up, but they just laid down and just sat there. It was like it was seen so clearly, but not by me, that any urge or any seeking to get happiness was never going to give me that. It was never going to give me that idea that was appearing of happiness, and that I was never going to avoid that fear. That fear was arising with the thought that I've got to get the happiness, so I could never get away from that fear. So it appeared that Lisa, at some points, was choosing not to do anything, but life then wrote in the choice to just sit there, and it was a giving up that happened, but I never gave up.
There was
Lisa
no one to
never
give
gave
up in the first place.
Sorry?
There was no one to give up in the first place.
Life began to write in that story, and sometimes I call it the liberation story. Like, it appears that you're doing the liberation story, and then it's seen that no one ever did any of it. And it's the same with the Buddha in Buddhism. I don't know what the Buddha said, but in the teachings when I learned Buddhism, it was exactly the same dynamic, the pull to desire, like to I can't remember how actually I was taught in Buddhism. It was called craving and aversion, I think, when I was taught it in Buddhism. And it is the end of that. That craving, that aversion, gives the whole impression of somebody here doing something, craving something in the future and trying to avoid something that's happened in the past.
It arises with self-identity.
Yeah. And
It arises together and falls away together.
yeah. Because in that craving, there's an automatic self that can get it.
Yeah.
In that dynamic. And that self is the one that registers time and space. A self that has got good things in the past and has got to get good things in the future. When that falls away, there's just this. And it really is that dynamic of craving and aversion which gives the impression of a separate self. The one that solidly remembers in the past the good experiences. And trust me, the self, the seeking self, doesn't remember like just being happy. It remembers the highs and the lows. If you go back through the memories, it's always the highs and the lows. It's never just walking. Sometimes it's just walking. It's the highs and the lows it remembers, the dramatic experiences.
Well, that's where memories lay down,
Yeah.
where there's emotion involved.
Yeah.
With just routine living, there's no emotion like that. That's the connection with memory.
Yeah. And that's the one that gives the impression of somebody existing in space and time.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because we have such grand stories around the self and these memories, but really it's just trading memories. When you've apparently appeared to trade well in the world, or you've screwed it up and done a bad mistake. But when that falls away, there's just this happening, and then there's not the trying to get in the future and remembering of the past that's adding to trying to get in the future or trying to avoid in the future. The self is a seeking dynamic. And the memories are all adding, like it uses the appearance of memory to add on to that seeking dynamic.
The me.
Yeah, the me, the self. Others say self, I say seeking.